What you're looking at right now is my first ever Warhammer paint job. It was a blue Space Marine that I painted back in 2018, and you can see with this being my very first paint job that there is certainly a lot of errors with it. The color is certainly not solid. It doesn't really look blue, it's just more muddy. There's a lot of bad line and brush work on this guy, and I didn't really know about paint thinning back then. I mean, at least I thought I did, but not really. So there's a lot of areas where the paint is certainly very thick, especially around the helmet area. So I figured it's been several years since I painted this guy, so I thought that I would try to remaster this model. And the reason why is because it was my first one, it's special. Now I do have a few goals with this restoration. The first thing is that I am not going to wash off all of the old paint and start from scratch. I just want to restore this guy in what way I can. It's also not so bad that I do need to start from scratch. I think I'll be okay. Mostly though, the goal is just to show off how I've improved as a painter over the years. I'm certainly not a professional. I'm still relatively a newbie compared to maybe some of you guys watching this, but I'm gonna do my best. And in regards to colors for this guy, I really want him to pop. I want him to be bright. I want him to be colorful. Pretty much the opposite of what he is right now, very muddy and just nasty looking. I also really want to try some new things while I'm painting this guy. I usually paint Warhammer Fantasy, like I'm holding a little Skaven right now. So there's a few things, stepping back into 40K that I want to attempt as a painter. Muzzle burn, maybe some new color arrangements. I'm thinking about maybe putting a golden mohawk on his helmet. I don't know what that's going to look like, but we're going to find out. Before we get started though, I would encourage you guys to check out Modular Realms, linked down below in the description. They are a company that I have been talking to recently, and they do magnetic D&D tiles. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to be doing a full review on these people soon just to show you guys them, but if you're interested in just some very easy to assemble magnetic building terrain pieces, Modular Realms linked down below in the description. Now, even though this was my very first model and my first paint job, there is actually a lot of things about this model that I really like. For example, I just love the pose that I put him in. I intentionally made him look at the knife that is covered in blood as if he's sort of contemplating like what is his purpose in the grand design of the universe. The next thing, I really like the fact that the weapon is covered in blood. There's a little bit of extra detail, like going the extra mile with this model. And then even in some ways, I do like the muddier look of this model because my goal was to make him look dirty, like he just got out of combat. But in the end, instead of making him look like he just came out of combat, I just made him look, I don't know, just ugly. But I began by redoing all of the blue work on this model, giving to it this brighter color scheme. What I wanted to do with this is, of course, put the darker blues down near the bottom and then the lighter blues near the top, because I was imagining kind of a top-down light source on this guy. I was spending a lot of time in particular on the legs. I don't know why, it was just the legs were giving me a little bit of trouble. And speaking of trouble, I will say that covering up the blood details that I had done on this guy was a little bit difficult. It required a lot of shades of blue because, red is such a strong color. So, putting shade after shade of watered down blue over it to cover it up, it took, a couple of shades of waiting for it to dry and stuff, but I got it covered. Finally, after finishing all the blue work, it was time to move on to my favorite bit, which is, of course, the gold. So I really like the gold and blue contrast on a Space Marine, but I admit I kind of did some stupid things while trying to paint this guy. The first thing is I tried to paint the boots of this Space Marine gold, but as I was experimenting with it more and more, I just wasn't happy with how this was turning out. I don't know, it kind of started to look like he was wearing slippers, but I don't know. I even tried just painting like the band of his foot gold and leaving the rest blue, but then it looked like he was wearing like a golden sandal. So I wasn't really a big fan of that, but again, I'm experimenting and trying new things, okay? But what really went wrong with my experiments here, which really made me kind of think, okay, maybe I should be a little bit more traditional with this painting, is the helmet. So the helmet was the biggest pain in the ass while I was painting this guy. Like, I'm gonna be real. Like, I had not thinned the paints when I first did this back in like 2018. So this helmet was just like paint chunks. Like, I don't know how to describe it. I even was attempting to paint like the little mohawky metal piece on the top of his head gold. And this looked I'm gonna be real, it looked stupid. I thought, oh, maybe it's just because it's gold. Let's just try silver. Let's see what that looks like. So I tried silver, and yet again, I thought it looked terrible. I even tried just painting like the tubes and everything on his mask silver, but I didn't like that either. So I just thought, man, we're just gonna have to go back to traditional blue with this helmet. And once I did that, I was like, oh yeah, this looks great. I actually got so frustrated by this. I actually went on Google and I was typing in like, Space Marine paintings and stuff, and I was looking at like other jobs that people have done. And anytime I did see like a paint job where someone had done this, where they had like altered like the colors on like the helmet from being a traditional blue to being like something else, I just didn't think it looked good. But I don't know, maybe that's just me. So I went with just a pure blue helmet. And of course, got those red eyes snuck in there. So I thought that looked really cool. I also continued to experiment with silver on the armor during this time because I figured, well, I've already got the silver paint out. Might as well try some things. For example, on the chest piece, you've got the upper part of the chest piece that covers like the pecs. And then you got the lower part, which covers the abs. I thought it might be kind of cool if like the upper part was gold and like the abs part was like silver. I tried that. That looks stupid. I don't recommend that either. So my experiments with this guy just were not working out. But at the same time, like that's not a bad thing because like, here's the thing. When it comes to painting, when it comes to any sort of expression, I know that like the rules are gold chest plate, blue helmet, whatever the standard Space Marine rules. But if you're always just following other people's rules, like you're never going to be yourself. It's the moment that you decide to break the rules and the expectations of other people, that's when you truly start expressing who you are. And so that's why I just wanted to experiment and keep experimenting with this guy just to see what kind of a painter I was and what I liked and what I didn't like, even if the results were ending up being absolute garbage. Basically with this guy, I just returned to tradition in the end, and I went with your basic blue color scheme with gold edges. Either way, despite any failed experimentation, this guy was looking absolutely fantastic. The colors were popping exactly like I wanted. He was no longer muddy looking. He looked clean. He looked proud. I loved him so far. And once the main body was done, it was time to move on to the smaller bits that I needed to address. This would be like the gun and the gun holster on his hip. He has some grenades. Of course, there is the backpack, the small pieces of parchment that hang from his seals on his armor. I added some blood back onto the model, just a little bit as like a homage to the first paint job that I did. But at no point did I go in there with the dark tone like I did the very first time I painted this guy, just to, fill in those cracks and stuff. I just didn't feel like that was necessary because, I wanted this guy to look pristine and clean. And then last but not least, I just needed to do the groundwork on this guy because I don't know, like ever since, like this is just a little skaven that I got here, and you can see I got two little like bushes like glued onto the base. There's no like sand or anything. This is one of like my earlier models, but this was the first time I did terrain work by just putting like some little bushes like on the base. And I just think it looks so good. It like completes the model. And I wanted to give this first model that treatment. Using a very, very small amount of clear glue, I made a thin layer on the base, and then I just added some fine sand and like some brown kind of dirt. I wanted him to kind of look like he was on not really like a desert planet, but kind of like a place that seemed kind of barren and dry, which is also why I kind of used the dead looking plants. And that was it, guys. So here are the pros. First of all, I absolutely love the brighter color scheme as opposed to the original muddier, nasty looking color work that I did. Of course, I love the fact that there's a base now instead of just that bare, nasty black plastic. I mean, who wants to see like a bare plastic base under your like favorite model when you could like add a little bit of terrain just to add that little extra immersion? The cons though, the things that I was just about this new paint job that I'm still a little frustrated by, none of my ideas worked on the helmet, and unfortunately the paint was so thick on there that even as I, tried to make it look as good as I could, I was really struggling. So I don't think the helmet looks as good as it could look, but it doesn't look that bad. In the end though, I was really happy with it. I think he looks good for a remaster. Guys, if you want, check out Modular Realms. Again, linked down below in the description. I will be doing a full review of these dungeon tiles soon. Let you guys know if they are, worth playing around with. Look at that, dude. Isn't that cool? Anyway,